Hey guys, welcome back. I am Ashish, and today we'll continue with our second lecture of Module 1, that is nothing but Evolution of Public Administration. Now, we have already dealt with meaning, scope, and significance, and having dealt with those, things are going to get much more interesting now. We will get to learn about various scholars and thinkers of PubEd, and first of them being Woodrow Wilson. Wilson's view and evolution of discipline is what we are going to discuss in today's lecture, and we'll get it over with. And I can assure you that this will be a very exhaustive coverage, including all the hidden topics too. So sit tight and enjoy the ride. Let's start. Evolution and status of the discipline. So this slide will contain background info which is just for reference, but do not take it lightly because we know that UPSC has the trend of asking very unpredictable questions. So anything can be asked from this, and also they have already asked regarding this. For example, I'll tell you, Woodrow Wilson is called as father of public administration, and UPSC has already asked about other scholars who have worked before him, but were not given the status of being the founding fathers of public administration, but Woodrow Wilson was given. Why was this? So UPSC has already asked from background info, so I ask you to please pay attention to this, and this is again just for reference. So as an aspect of government activity, public administration has a very old history. जब से लोग communities में रहना शुरू किया है लोगों ने, जब से political society as such आई है, administration रहा ही है. You need administration to carry on, right? So as an aspect of government activity, it is as old as political society. जब से leadership की equation आई है society में, तब से administration भी है. But as a field of systematic study, as a field of separate academic subject, it is much more recent, only about 100 years old. Why is this so? Because this around 100 years ago, Woodrow Wilson gave us the idea of bringing public administration into the realm of other subjects and introducing it as a different subject. So as a field of systematic study, it is very much more recent, but as an aspect of activity, government activity, it is very old. एंड इन इंडिया के टर्म्स में बोलें तो कौटिल्याज अर्थशास्त्र में भी रिगार्डेड एज ओल्डेस्ट टेक्स्ट ऑन पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. अबाउट दिस विल रीड मोर इन द फर्स्ट मॉड्यूल ऑफ पेपर 2. what Kautilya's Arthashastra talks about, it is a part of your syllabus. So this may be regarded as the oldest text of public administration, and also there were Plato and Aristotle who described the style of administration in Greek city-states. See, remember one thing, these scholars have dealt with public administration, but they did not call it public administration as such. There was no name given to it. Okay, so they have dealt with public administration, they have dealt with administration styles, they have dealt with everything, लेकिन उसको एक प्रॉपर नाम नहीं दिया गया था. इट वॉज नॉट सिस्टमैटिक स्टडी. ओके, सो दीज पीपल हैव डन सम वर्क. दिस इज द history of public administration, so to say. Machiavelli is another such author who in medieval times wrote the book The Prince, and in this book he advised European kings on how to administer their governments properly. And during those times Machiavelli was mocked, and even his books were burnt, and much happened in Machiavelli's time. But we have found with time that his book The Prince contains much in-depth discourse about administration, on how to be a better government. So this is also Machiavelli, and Machiavelli is an important person because UPSC has already asked in paper 2 about Machiavelli. UPSC has asked about comparing Kautilya and Machiavelli. So Machiavelli is an important person, you must remember about him. Another person is Montesquieu, his work The Spirit of Laws. See, you do not have to remember these works, okay? Just remember that there was work done before Woodrow Wilson, or before about 100 years old, when public administration as a separate subject started. There was work done before that, so you need to understand that. Remember the names, that is more than enough. You do not need to remember the works of those authors. Just remember that कौटिल्य है, कौटिल्य का अर्थशास्त्र तो याद रहेगा आएगा ही. प्लेटो है, एरिस्टोटल है, यू कैन जस्ट राइट दे हैव इवन रिटन ऑन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. माकियावेली का नाम याद रख लो, मोंटेस्क्यू का नाम याद रख लो. So another, the cameralist is a group of people. Now these were singular people. Cameralist is a group of people. Cameralist is a name given to administrators of medieval century in Europe. In England they were called cameralists. ठीक है. तो around 1500 to 1700 के time में cameralists started writing in Europe about systematic study of public administration, and this is an important watershed because they still did not call it public administration as such, but they started writing about why we need a systematic study of administration of governments. There should be a systematic research on topics. ठीक है. तो ये सब उन्होंने बोलना शुरू किया. सो दिस इज कैमरलिस्ट इज एन इम्पोर्टेंट वाटरशेड इन हिस्ट्री ऑफ इवोल्यूशन ऑफ पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. And there was this person called as Hamilton. He wrote something. Then there was Charles Bunin. He's a French guy. He wrote Principles they administrate in public. So his work is also considered. It is a first separate treatise on subject of public administration. So as you can see, he even included the word public administration in his title, but still as a separate field of study and research it was not evolved as such. So this is all what happened before Woodrow Wilson. Some more background info. But however, public administration as a separate subject of study originated and developed in the USA itself. Okay. Everyone, as we have seen, कौटिल्य का इंडिया में टेक्स्ट था, एंड प्लेटो, एरिस्टोटल, बुनिन एंड माकियावेली, ये सब यूरोप के लोग हैं. प्लेटो, एरिस्टोटल, माकियावेली, कैमरलिस्ट, Charles Bunin, everyone is from Europe, but they did not start as such a different systematic field of study, and that originated and developed only in USA. And Rumki Basu is an Indian scholar. She gives the reasons for this, why it started in USA. She says that scientific management movement, which was started by F.W. Taylor, was a big push for that. Industrialization, which gave rise to large scale organizations. Welfare state का concept आया. What is the concept of welfare state? That government should take care of its people. That is a welfare state, as opposed to police state or laissez-faire. Police state और laissez-faire क्या होता है? Laissez-faire is which is not welfare state, giving free hand to private enterprises and not interfering much. Social schemes में ज़्यादा interfere मत करो. जैसा चल रहा है प्राइवेट में वैसे चलने दो. गवर्नमेंट ज़्यादा interfere नहीं करेगी. वेलफेयर स्टेट में गवर्नमेंट interferes for the welfare of people. So these were the reasons why it originated and developed in USA. It originated as a separate subject. Also, अब इसके बाद हम देखेंगे एक पर्सन के बारे में who is considered in many parts of the world as the father of public administration, but as a whole we do not take him because of several reasons. His name is Lawrence von Stein. Okay, so from the mid 1800s to 1930s he wrote about public administration. He is a German professor from Vienna, and in many parts he is considered the founder of science of pub-ed. In many parts, in the time of von Stein, public administration was considered a form of administrative law, but Stein believed that this concept was too restrictive. He said that you are restricting it to only administrative law, while at the same time it should not be considered to only one particular field. Public administration deals with all the various fields, social science, polity and administrative law and everything. This concept is very restrictive, was his idea, von Stein's idea, and he said that public administration should not be restricted to something. See, this is von Stein theory. He says that public administration relies on many pre-established disciplines such as sociology, political science, administrative law and public finance. So you should not restrict it to only administrative law. He called pub-ed as an integrating science which integrates all of these disciplines, sociology, polity and administrative law. He called pub-ed as an integrating science which integrates all these disciplines, and he also said that administrators should be concerned with both theory and practice. He also argued that public administration is a science Why? Because knowledge is generated and evaluated according to the scientific method. That is why it is a science. So, as we can see, much before Woodrow Wilson gave his idea of public administration being a separate field of study and separate science, Bornstein had already argued that public administration is a science, it is an integrating science, and whatnot. In many parts of the world, mostly Europe and also in other parts of the world, Bornstein is considered as the founder of science of public administration. But due to reasons like his work was not published and translation of that work was not available, Woodrow Wilson was already declared as father of public administration, and it went unchallenged. Now, Robert T. Golembiewski is a scholar or a thinker which we must all learn about when we learn about development phases of public administration. Why? What we learn about is Nicholas Henry's paradigms. Everywhere in every book you will find Nicholas Henry's paradigms. But when you read Nicholas Henry's own book, he has said that he has used Robert Golembiewski's focus and locus concept for defining his paradigms. So we must understand what Golembiewski has given us. So next two slides will deal with Golembiewski's view, and after that we'll deal with evolution of public administration. So going ahead with Golembiewski, when he defined the evolution of public administration, he gave us four phases. And those four phases had different names like phase 1. Now remember one thing, whenever you will study about evolution, वो किसी भी स्कॉलर ने हिस्ट्री डिफाइन की हो evolution की, हर स्कॉलर सिर्फ यही बोलेगा कि फर्स्ट फेज वाज ऑलवेज पॉलिटिक्स एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन डिस्टिंक्शन. बिकॉज अर्ली थिंकर्स जो थे उन्होंने हमेशा इस बात पे फोकस किया है कि पॉलिटिक्स एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन आर टू सेपरेट फील्ड्स, दे कैन नॉट बी कोमिंगल्ड, दे कैन नॉट सिट टुगेदर. पॉलिटिक्स शुड बी सेपरेट एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन शुड बी सेपरेट. सो एवरी इवोल्यूशन दैट यू स्टडी ऑफ एनी स्कॉलर, किसी इंडियन स्कॉलर ने इवोल्यूशन टेबल बनाई हो या गोलमब्यूस्की ने बनाई हो या निकोलस हेनरी ने बनाई हो, फर्स्ट फेज और फर्स्ट पैराडाइम विल ऑलवेज रिमेन अबाउट पॉलिटिक्स एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन डिस्टिंक्शन, बिकॉज दैट इज व्हाट अर्लियर स्कॉलर्स dealt with. So phase 1 of Golembiewski is analytical politics and administration distinction. Phase 2 is concrete, emphasize on these terms, analytical and concrete. Phase 1 and phase 2 of Golembiewski deals with politics administration distinction, but phase 1 is analytical, जहाँ पे उतना concretely distinct नहीं हुआ था, where people just started talking about कि यार अलग होना चाहिए, and phase 2 में जाके उसको अलग कर दिया कि no, these are separate, you cannot put politics and administration together, politics is separate and administration is separate. This is what phase 2 of Golembiewski consists of. Phase 3 is a science of management, phase 4 is a public policy approach. Now how Golembiewski approached these fields, we'll look at this. You do not have to take tension, you will remember everything, सब कुछ याद हो जाएगा in the next two slides. Golembiewski, what he did was he gave us 4 cells of 2 by 2 matrix, and each of these cells represented each phase. There are 4 cells, so her cell represented each phase. Cell 1 was phase 1, cell 2 was phase 2. तो इस तरह हर सेल को एक फेज एलोकेट किया था. It was a 2 by 2 matrix, 2 columns and 2 rows. Okay, and he characterized each phase by locus and focus. Now we'll see how this 2 by 2 matrix is built, and locus and focus we'll see now. So this is how that 2 by 2 matrix looks like. Okay, this is the y-axis, which is the focus axis. This is the x-axis, which is the locus axis. This is the phase 1, this is phase 2, phase 3 and phase 4. Why these are placed like this, we'll see now. Because focus and locus both had specified and unspecified areas. For example, this is the focus axis. So this side of focus axis represented your unspecified field. What is unspecified focus? Where scholars are not sure के focus क्या होना चाहिए. Okay, so first of all, what is focus and what is locus? Focus means what your public administration strives to achieve. आपको poverty alleviate करनी है क्या, is that the focus of public administration, or you have to uh, eliminate malnutrition, or you have to improve the standard of living of people, or what not. Focus means what you have to achieve. That is what is focus means. That is the focus of public administration. So this side of y-axis represents that era when scholars were not sure about what this focus is. So this is the unspecified part of the focus. So phase 2 and phase 4 lie in the unspecified part of the focus. We'll see how. Do not worry about it. I am just explaining these terms. And this part of y-axis represents the specified part of focus, which consists of phase 3 and phase 1. Now, what is locus? Locus is nothing but where it is situated. In simple engineering terms, अगर आपने engineering की है तो locus आपको मालूम पड़ेगा. Locus gives us your position. Okay, so where your public administration lies is what is specified by locus. And what do you mean by that? Whether it lies within politics, whether it lies outside politics. So that is the locus. We saw that earlier scholars for always specified on politics and administration distinction. So that was the locus. And the upper part of the x-axis of the locus is specified part. Phase 3 and phase 2 lie in the specified part of the locus, and the lower part of the x-axis is the unspecified part of the locus. In phase 1 and phase 4, people were not sure about where it should lie. So this is phase 1. Phase 1, as we saw already, it is analytical distinction. Analytical is the important word here. It is the analytical distinction of politics and administration. Locus is not set. Why locus is not set? Because it is just analytical. Phase 2 was concrete. Phase 2 was concrete distinction. Phase 1 is just analytical. They were not sure. They were just talking about it. Okay, yaar, politics should be different, administration should be different. So they were just talking about it. They were not sure about it. So locus is not set. Now I hope you understand what do you mean by locus. The position of public administration was not set in stone, but functions performed by both is determined. Lekin they were sure what public administration must achieve. They were sure that it should be a different field of study, it should be a different academic subject. So what functions it should perform, that were defined, but they were not sure whether it should be within politics or outside politics. So this is phase 1 for you, where locus is unspecified. As you can see, locus is unspecified, right? This is on the lower part of the x-axis, which is unspecified locus, and focus is specified. Focus, as you can see, this is on the left hand side of the y-axis, which is the specified focus part. Now let's talk about phase 2. Phase 2, as we have seen already, the running word here is concrete distinction of politics and administration. Locus was specified for both. Why? Because it was concrete distinction. Scholars in this time period were sure that politics should be different from administration. As you can see, it lies on the right hand side of the focus area, which is unspecified part of the focus, but it lies on the upper side of the x-axis, which is the specified part of the locus. Specified part of the locus. Locus was set. Moving towards phase 3. Now, as you can see, phase 3 lies in the most specific part of the quadrant. It is the specified focus, it has the specified locus. Now public administration in this era were sure what public administration must achieve and where it should be placed. Why they were sure where it should be placed? Because preceding era जो था phase 2 में, it was decided कि it should be different, politics and administration should be different. So that was set in concrete. And phase 3 में आते आते they even set in concrete what public administration must achieve. So phase 3 in short is the most specified phase of all the phases. उसमें locus भी specified है, focus भी specified है. It emphasized the isolation of what? Politics and administration. It emphasized the isolation and analysis of administrative process. ठीक है, तो administrative process को भी analyze किया and they specified the focus too. Now let's move on to phase 4. As you can see, phase 4 lies in the most unspecified part of the quadrant. यहाँ पे ना locus set है ना focus set है. This era of Golembiewski's development phases is post 1950s and 1960s, जहाँ पे we will see in Nicholas Henry's paradigms, he defines it more clearly. It was a era of crisis of identity. Public administration was dealing with a crisis of identity. तो phase 4 में it was unspecified focus and unspecified locus. Both were unspecified. This is what phase 4 is. Politics and administration commingle. So what happens is locus gets unspecified, and they also said that it encompasses the total set of all public and private institutions and processes that are policy relevant. So in short, उनका focus भी unspecified हो गया था, उनका locus भी unspecified हो गया था. They were all arguing amongst each other. Now going back to the previous slide, as we can see, it is a 4 cells of 2 by 2 matrix that we saw. Golembiewski gave us 2 by 2 matrix, and there were 4 cells. Each cell represented one phase. First phase was analytical distinction, second phase was concrete distinction, third phase was a science of management where they were sure of both locus and focus. It was the much specified part of the development process, and phase 4 is the public policy approach where they were arguing amongst each other. Each phase was characterized by locus or focus. Focus refers to what the public administration must achieve, the targets of public administration, and locus refers to where the location. Locus refers to the location where the public administration must lie, whether inside politics or outside politics, and both locus and focus together distinguished all the phases. Now this slide consists of everything that we have talked earlier. If you want to read more in detail, you can just pause the video on this slide and read about each phases. I have written in words. Now, having dealt with Golembiewski's phases of administration evolution, now we will deal with Nicholas Henry's evolution of paradigms. Now, Nicholas Henry has very beautifully divided the whole period of history of public administration into 5 paradigms. Paradigm 1, Paradigm 2, और पैराडाइम 2 और पैराडाइम 3 के बीच में एक चैलेंज एरा है, द क्राइसिस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी पीरियड. फिर पैराडाइम 3 आता है, पैराडाइम 4, एंड देन पैराडाइम 5. नाउ वी विल डील विद ईच ऑफ दीज पैराडाइम्स in detail, but before that I will deal with Woodrow Wilson. Why? Because after reading Woodrow Wilson, paradigm 1 will become more clear. So we'll come back to Nicholas Henry. Before that we'll deal with Woodrow Wilson. So this is the beginning, Wilson's contribution. Woodrow Wilson. Who was Woodrow Wilson? A fun fact about him, some background info. He was the President of United States of America during some 7 to 8 year period, I guess, from 1913 to 1921 or 22, and he was very active during the World War I. If you have read world history as part of your UPSC syllabus, you would know that Woodrow Wilson gave 14 points after World War I ended, and Treaty of Versailles was also mainly manufactured on the recommendations of Woodrow Wilson. So he has a larger role to play, not only in history of public administration but also history of the world as a whole. So he is a really important person. So in our public administration terminology, he is called as the father of public administration. So he was the father of public administration. In 1887 he gave the essay The Study of Administration, and this led to the start of everything. In this essay he argued about 3 main things. His objectives of this essay were separate discipline of public administration. He argued for a separate discipline. He argued that it should be a new science, like there are sciences like social sciences, history, geography होता है, आपका proper science होता है, general science होता है. He argued that public administration should also be called a science because it is eminently practical science. And he also argued for reforms in American public administration. These were the objectives of his 1887 essay, The Study of Administration, and this laid the foundation of everything. This laid the foundation of public administration as a subject as we study today for UPSC. So thank Woodrow Wilson for that. So his points of argument First of all, he was the first thinker to openly argue about politics administration dichotomy. He was what started Golembiewski's first phase and Nicholas Henry's first paradigm. He argued for politics and administration dichotomy. What this means in simple terms is politics and administration are different, they cannot sit together. So he said that administration lies outside the sphere of politics. Administrative questions are not political questions. I am highlighting this in different color because this is a line which if you can you must remember. So what happens is UPSC asks questions based on the quotes of thinkers. They will quote a person and they will say that in the light of the above statement tell what this or that person meant by these words. So if you can you should remember these different colored words that I am highlighting, because this you can quote in your answer too, and if you are quoting in your answer becomes just beautiful. Whenever you are writing about, let's say, politics administration dichotomy, and if you write these words that Woodrow Wilson has said administration lies outside the sphere of politics, your argument for dichotomy becomes much more relevant because now you have attached a name of a thinker with it. Okay, so try to remember these different colored lines, it will be important for your answer writing skills too. So he said that administration lies outside the sphere of politics. Administrative questions are not political questions. Although politics sets the task for administration, it should not be suffered to manipulate its offices. So he said that basically politics and administration should be different. He said that field of administration is the field of business. It is removed from the hurry and strife of politics. This is a very important statement. It is important for you to remember. If you can remember it, it's well and good. The field of administration is the field of business. It is removed from the hurry and strife of politics. This is what he said. And he gave some arguments for separation too, why it should be separate. Some of his arguments were, he defended on the works of German writer Bluntschli. Now what Bluntschli said was, it's true what Bluntschli said. Bluntschli said that politics deals in things which are great, universal and general in nature, while administration deals with things which are small and particular in nature. So what basically this means is, for example, politicians का basic काम होता है policy making. So policy making is a universal and general in nature, एक general policy बना देंगे. And administrators का काम क्या होता है, उस general पॉलिसी को पर्टिकुलर नेचर देना. दिस इज कॉल्ड एज डेलीगेटेड लेजिस्लेशन. वी विल लर्न अबाउट दिस इन फ्यूचर टॉपिक्स, बट दिस इज व्हाट Bluntschli said, which is to a great extent true, that politics deals in things which are great, universal and general in nature, while administration deals with things which are small and particular in nature. Politics is thus a special province of statesmen and administration is of technical official. So that is why they should be differentiated. Other argument that he gave was, public administration is detailed and systematic study of public law. The broad plans of government action is not administration, but detailed execution of such plans is administration. In simple words, he said that policy making is not the part of administration, but policy execution is the part of administration. As you can see, broad plans of government action is not administration. The plans is not administration. The policy making is not the administration, but detailed execution of such plans is administration. This is the argument he gave. Other argument he gave was, administration is business, and like business, it should not involve itself in question of politics. This is also one line. If you can, please remember it. Administration is business, and like business, it does not involve itself in questions of politics. And also about partisan political patronage, that bureaucrats should not be partition towards some party. Political patronage should not be there, so that is why it should be different. These were the arguments given by Woodrow Wilson for politics administration dichotomy. Now remember one thing, that while Woodrow Wilson argued for dichotomy, at the same time he acknowledged that they cannot be completely compartmentalized into different sections. We will see that in our next slide, which is dichotomy, not divorce. These are the words of Woodrow Wilson. He said that I am talking about dichotomy, separateness, but not divorce. That means not complete separateness. He said that the field of administration is a part of political life, just as the machinery is a part of manufactured product. जिस तरह machinery and manufactured product are different, but yet they are related in a very intricate manner. In a similar way, administration and political life are also related, they are separate, but they are not divorced. Administration must mirror the principles of government in operation. He also said that administration cannot be divorced from its connections with other branches of public law without being distorted and robbed of its true significance. अगर आप उसको पूरी तरह से divorce कर दोगे तो it will get distorted, it will not remain public administration anymore, it will get robbed of its true significance. That is why he said that I am talking about dichotomy and not divorce. Another point that Woodrow Wilson raised was science of administration. First, he said that it should be different, politics and administration, dichotomy. He talked about dichotomy of politics and administration. Second point he talked about was science of administration. He said that like other sciences, public administration should also be considered a science because it is eminently practical science. We saw that in the first slide, right? We'll see that again now. He said that there should be science of administration to strengthen the parts of government, to make its business less unbusinesslike, and to strengthen and purify its organization, and to crown its duties with dutifulness. These are the words of Woodrow Wilson. You must remember some particular keywords, okay? Make its business less unbusinesslike. These are the keywords. Wilson believed that administration was a eminently practical science. That is why it should be called as a science like other general science and social sciences. Why there was a need of administration? Again, he gave some reasons. Now let's look at some reasons. Not much scientific method was to be discerned in American administrative process. He was the first scholar. You must remember that after him came F.W. Taylor, who gave a scientific management movement, but Woodrow Wilson was the first person in 1887 to talk about that administrative process must contain a scientific method. Excessive emphasis on political aspects such as constitution, nature of state, and who should make the law and what the law should be. ज़्यादा emphasis इस पे देते थे, but lack of emphasis on how the law must be administered. There was a lack of emphasis on the scientific method of administering the law. So he argued that for this reason there should be a science of administration. He said that administrative science first developed in Europe by French and German academics. We saw that, right? Plato, Aristotle, आपके Cameralist and Charles Bunin and Machiavelli, and all of these were Europeans. And Woodrow Wilson gave reason himself. He gave reasons for this. Woodrow Wilson says that why was this so? Because governments in European countries were independent of popular assent. वो लोग लोगों की नहीं सुनते थे, राजा की चलती थी. The king had the final word. So there was more of government and less of public opinion. He said that desire to keep the government a monopoly, thus greater interest in discovering least irritating means of governing people. So that was the reason why in Europe and France people were writing about administration. They were Machiavelli was writing The Prince. He was advising the kings how to govern better. Why? Because there was a desire to keep government a monopoly, and that is why there was greater interest in discovering least irritating means of governing. Consequently, administration developed to meet the needs of highly compact and centralized forms of European governments. They were highly compact and centralized. That is why it was that way the environment was conducive for development of administrative science in Europe by French and German academics. This is what is said by Woodrow Wilson himself, and he argued that this is the reason we need science of administration in our United States of America. He said that there is a need for Americanized science of administration to suit American constitutional and political setup. So that was all about science and administration that Woodrow Wilson talked about. We will move on to his next thought quickly. He talked about administration and business. Also, he said that there should be a science of administration to strengthen the paths of government, make its business less unbusinesslike. These are the keywords. If you can remember, please remember these. The field of administration is the field of business removed from hurry and strife of politics. Wilson believes that concerns of economy, efficiency, and effectiveness is common to both. And also he said that administration is like business but not business. It is the organic life. Now there is a meaning to this hashtag I have given. This will be revealed 5 to 6 slides later. You can see above he is saying that field of administration is the field of business, right? But at the same time he said that it is like business but not business. Another thought that Woodrow Wilson put forward was of comparative method. When we study the module of comparative public administration, it is an entirely separate module. We'll see how Woodrow Wilson is one of the first persons to tell about comparative methods. Wilson believes that without comparative studies in government, we cannot rid ourselves of the misconception that administration stands on a different basis in democratic and other states. He said that in all type of states there were some similarities, whether they are democratic or non-democratic. There is a misconception that they are different. In all types of states there are some similarities, and for this we need comparative studies. Structural likeness and functional sameness in governments all across the world. Remember these words: structural likeness and functional sameness. Whether they are democratic or non-democratic, there were some similarities: structural likeness and functional sameness. Wilson believed that one can never learn the weaknesses or virtues or peculiarities of any system without comparing it. If you do not compare it, you will not come to know what weaknesses are there, what good things are there. So this is what he said. Remember, this hashtag will come after 5 to 6 slides. I'll reveal why this hashtag is used. Here Wilson also agreed that this would lead to import of foreign systems. On one hand he says that we should compare, on the other hand he says that it would lead to import of foreign systems, but we do not want that. He says that while comparing, we should filter the governments through the cultural and constitutional lens. Every country has different culture, every country has different constitution. So while we compare, we should also make sure that we filter the governments through the cultural and constitutional lens, so that everything does not get imported. American how to do it must get priority over what to do. Our own politics must be touchstone for all the theories. We should compare, but our own politics must be the touchstone. He gives one example: if I see a murderous fellow sharpening a knife cleverly, I can borrow his way of sharpening the knife without borrowing his probable intention to commit murder with it. So this is what he said about comparative method. We'll move on to his another thought, which is role of public opinion. We saw that while he was arguing for need for science of administration, he said that in Europe governments were free of public opinion, and that is why writers and authors of Europe were able to focus on writing about public administration. So we'll see more about this in the same slide. Administration has to be continuously responsive to the multitudinous monarch called public opinion. He said that public opinion is a multitudinous monarch, and administration has to be continuously responsive to that. He said that public opinion cannot be done away with. Kitna bhi bura ho, public opinion will always be there, and administration will always have to be responsive to this. Wilson believed that public opinion hinders administrative reforms because it is multitudinous monarch. He believed that it hinders administrative reforms. It always comes in between administrative reforms. Government in European countries were free from popular assent. Public opinion takes the place of authoritative critique. Public always tries to criticize government policies, so public opinion takes the place of authoritative critique. He said that it should not be meddlesome, and he said that though is it a clumsy nuisance, it is not only beneficial but also altogether indispensable. Why it is beneficial? Because it checks on the tyranny of the government. It does not become a dictator. The government does not become a dictator. That is what public opinion does. It is beneficial. It is a clumsy nuisance, but it is beneficial, and it is altogether indispensable. You cannot do it away with. And there are ways to mold public opinion. If you consider it a nuisance, then there are ways to mold public opinion and mold it in your own ways. How to do that? Emphasize on political education of citizens, persuade them to demand a particular change, and technically schooled civil service is also one of the ways, because technically schooled civil service, technically schooled bureaucrats are the people who bureaucrats are the people who implement policies, and if they are good enough in implementing policies, if people are happy with the policies that are implemented, there will be not much criticism about it. So technically school civil service is also one of the ways to mold public opinion. Moving ahead, role of bureaucracy and civil servants. Wilson's views on this are: Policy will have no taint of officialdom. It should not be creation of permanent officials, but of political leaders. Policy making is the work of politicians. So policy should be creation of political leaders and not permanent officials or bureaucrats. Political leaders whose responsibility to public opinion will be direct. Why? Because political leaders are the ones who are elected by people, so they have a direct responsibility to people. So that is why he says that policy should be creation of political leaders whose responsibility to public opinion will be direct and inevitable. Keep bureaucracy out of political life of people. We saw that technically school civil services is indispensable. We saw that a civil service based on merit was necessary to organize democracy. So there is a need for civil services based on merit. Why he says that? Because in those times in America, civil service recruitment was based on spoil system and not on merit. This was after these reforms that were suggested by these thinkers like Woodrow Wilson and others, that civil services in the USA changed to the merit system. Before that, it was the spoil system. It was not based on merit. There used to be favoritism and nepotism and whatnot in selection. It is called a spoil system. I am not making this up. Spoil system is actually a term. You can Google it up. So he says that civil services should be based on merit. Wilson advocated concentration of powers for civil servants and also favored large discretionary powers for civil servants. He says that since we are separating politics and administration, there is a need that civil servants be powerful enough so that they can implement policy without any interference. Also discretionary powers if need arises. Example of discretionary powers you can find in polity very well. In polity, for example, president has discretionary powers to appoint prime minister when there is no proper majority. So these are discretionary powers. They can act on their own. There are no written rules to act in such a situation, but they can act on their own. These are called discretionary powers. So Wilson advocated for powers for civil servants and also discretionary powers for civil servants. He said that the ideal for us is a civil service cultured and self-sufficient enough. There should be a cultured civil service and self-sufficient civil service. How it will be self-sufficient? It will be by giving powers. How it will be cultured? It will be by technically schooling them. So there is what is ideal for us is cultured civil servants and civil service and self-sufficient civil service. Why is it important? To act with sense and vigor and yet intimately connected with political thought by means of election. So he says that they should be self-sufficient enough. They should have separate powers, but at the same time they should be intimately connected with political thought, because it is not divorce, it is just dichotomy. Wilson was strongly opposed to the creation of bureaucratic elite not subject to democratic control. He did not want a bureaucracy which is too powerful, so he was opposed to creation of bureaucratic elite. अगर ज़्यादा powerful bureaucracy हो जाएगी तो public will get irritated and they will get frustrated. He was opposed to the creation of bureaucratic elite not subject to democratic control, so there should always be democratic control. Another point which is analysis of Wilson is Wilson's essay raises more questions than providing answers. Why is it so? Woodrow Wilson himself noted the study of administration is too general, too broad and too vague. He himself said that it is too general and too broad and too vague. You are saying that it should be a separate field, it should be a separate science, but at the same time you are saying that it is too general, too broad and too vague. So it is one of the questions that he raises. Wilson was ambivalent on many issues. Three main particular issues that he was ambivalent on are what the study of administration actually entailed. He did not emphasize this. He said that there should be a separate academic study, there should be a separate science, but he did not tell what this academic study should entail, what this science should entail. So he failed to amplify that what this separate study should actually entail. He failed to amplify what the proper relationship should be between administrative and political realms. On one hand he says there is dichotomy, on another hand he says it is dichotomy not divorce. So what actual proper relationship is, he failed to amplify that. Whether or not administrative studies should ever become become a science akin to natural sciences. He argued for a need for science, but he did not say that whether or not it should actually become a science. So he failed to amplify these terms. He just raised some questions but did not provide answers for that. He raised many questions but did not provide answers for that. Wilson was also ambivalent on following topics: politics, administration, dichotomy. We saw that dichotomy, not divorce. Science of administration, comparative nature of public administration, administration as business, and role of bureaucracy. Now in all of these topics, these are the thoughts that we saw in previous slides. In all of these topics I have marked something as hashtags, and these hashtags are in which he opposes his own thoughts. So for example, in science of administration we will see that he failed to amplify what actually that science should entail. That is what Wilson was ambivalent on science of administration. In comparative nature of administration, as you can see here, he said that there should be comparison between various studies and this hashtag various governments, and as this hashtag suggests, he also said that while there should be a comparative method, we should not directly compare, we should filter it with cultural and constitutional lens. And this his words on sharpening a knife and intention of murdering and everything. So on one hand he says that we should compare, on another hand he says that we should be careful. So he was ambivalent on comparative methods. This is what this hashtag means. He raised more questions than answering them. In role of public opinion, he says that it should be it is a clumsy nuisance, but it is also beneficial. So he was ambivalent on this topic too. In a sense he was not ambivalent, he was just stating some very obvious facts, but as is the nature of criticism, they criticize everything. So this is one of those criticism. In role of bureaucracy, he said that as you can see the hashtag here, this hashtag means that he was ambivalent on this topic. He said that he said that we need a strong bureaucracy, we should give them powers, we should even give them discretionary powers, and they should be technically schooled, cultured, and self-sufficient enough. But at the same time he says that he was strongly opposed to the creation of bureaucratic elite. So he was ambivalent again. एक तरफ बोलते हैं कि strong bureaucracy बनाओ, दूसरी तरफ बोलते हैं कि he was opposed to the creation of bureaucratic elite. So he was ambivalent on these topics. So you should refer the hashtags in previous slide as he was ambivalent on these topics. So moving on, analysis. Now we'll analyze in deep. We'll consider 2 or 3 main critics of Woodrow Wilson, and also we will see why it is important that Woodrow Wilson is considered as father of public administration, and how other critics have criticized him. We'll see everything, positive and negative, everything. So we'll analyze Woodrow Wilson now. Dwight Waldo. Dwight Waldo is one of the persons that is considered as new age scholar of public administration. He was the person who is a key person for new public administration. When we'll study NPA, you will realize the importance of Dwight Waldo. He was the key proponents of new public administration. So while proposing new public administration, he had criticized old public administration. He had criticized everything that earlier scholars had stood for. So he had criticized even politics administration dichotomy, but at the same time he says that the publication of Wilson's essay marks the birth of public administration as a self-conscious theory. While he was criticizing everything, he even appreciates Woodrow Wilson, and this is an important statement because Woodrow Wilson is a great criticizer of old public administration and old scholars. So this statement coming from him is a big departure from his own thoughts. He says that publication of Wilson's essay marks the birth of public administration as a self-conscious theory. He even thanks Wilson for that. He says that his essay is DNA of public administration. These are the words of Dwight Waldo. Also, on other hand, emphasis on locus, that is where the field of admission should be located. This is not by Dwight Waldo. Emphasis on locus, that is where the field of admission should be located, is one of the positive points of Woodrow Wilson as we analyze. Before Woodrow Wilson, there was no person who had even attempted to emphasize where the public administration as a discipline should lie. Even if we consider that this dichotomy concept is flawed, even then we have to give him credit that he took up something which no one ever did. He took up the emphasis of locus, and because he defined locus, for further studies criticized him and improved on his concepts. We should give credit for him for emphasizing on the locus of public administration. He sought to aid the establishment of PubEd as a recognized field of study. Before Woodrow Wilson, there were many scholars in Europe, as we have seen. Even Lawrence von Stein was there, but none of them did a thorough research for public administration as a recognized field of study. हम आज UPSC में public administration optional नहीं पढ़ रहे होते if it was not for Woodrow Wilson. Lawrence von Stein ने ये नहीं किया था. That is why he is important. That is why he is the father of public administration, and that is why his criticisms all stand apart when we analyze him in context of what he has done. He is helpful for making out boundaries of a new discipline. Wilson's remarks need to be considered contextually. As always, if you are asked to criticize any author, remember this: if you are asked to criticize any author, whether it be it Woodrow Wilson or from module 2 like Taylor or Weber or anyone, write this statement. Those remarks are need to be considered contextually, because those were in those times. Those times were different, these times are different, so consider them contextually, in the context of those times. Criticism mainly based on empirical observation. Real importance lies in normative consideration. Empirical observation क्या होता है? Scientific studies and scientific outcomes and values. So criticisms are mainly based on scientific observations, but real importance lies in what they tried to convey. उनके ideas को, जो norms उन लोगों ने follow करने की कोशिश की है, उन norms को importance दो, rather than criticizing on empirical observation. So this is what was the positive analysis of Woodrow Wilson. Now we'll see 2 or 3 of the main critics of Woodrow Wilson, Brian Cook and Peter Self. So we'll see what these main critics of Woodrow Wilson said. Brian Cook's analysis. What Brian Cook said was, Wilson saw the need for expertise in governing a complex modern society. He praises Woodrow Wilson, and he also recognized the limits of expert knowledge. He again praises Woodrow Wilson that एक कॉम्प्लेक्स मॉडर्न सोसाइटी को गवर्न करने के लिए जो एक्सपर्टीज चाहिए होती है, उसकी नीड विल्सन ने देखी. ही आइडेंटिफाइड द नीड फॉर एक्सपर्टीज इन अ कॉम्प्लेक्स सोसाइटी. ही आइडेंटिफाइड द लिमिट्स ऑफ एक्सपर्ट नॉलेज. द एक्सपर्ट नॉलेज कैन एज्यूम मोर पावर्स टू itself. That is why Woodrow Wilson was opposed to bureaucratic elite, if you remember. So he recognized the limits of expert knowledge and dangers of a domineering illiberal officialism. That is the same thing. He also said that if politics and administration are separate, then the reconciliation of democracy and administration is straightforward. This is again a praise for Woodrow Wilson. What he is trying to say here is, if we consider the fact that politics and administration are separate, if we give credit to Woodrow Wilson that we have separated politics and administration, he says that when we have done this, there will be reconciliation of democracy and administration. What is democracy? True power to people, right? So when we have separated politics and administration, when there will be no political interference while implementing the policies, then true policies will be implemented. Policies will be implemented to their true sense. So there will be reconciliation of democracy and administration. So it will be like a triumph of democracy. So he praises Woodrow Wilson for that. Again, in the same vein of in the same vein of reconciliation of democracy and administration, Brian Cook gives us 2 points. Okay, first point is, administrators are and should be involved in policy making because their day-to-day experiences provides them the best vantage point because they are connected to grassroots. Administrators are connected to the ground reality, so that is why they are and should be involved in policy making. So this is the first point that Brian Cook puts forward. But he also says that the participation of unelected bureaucrats are not elected, but politicians are elected, right? So participation of unelected bureaucrats in policy making poses a problem for democratic legitimacy. ठीक है, तो democracy will not hold true if you involve bureaucrats in policy making. So that is how he says that there will be reconciliation of democracy and administration if politics and administration are done separate fields, if they are put in separate compartments. So on one hand he says that administrators give us the best ground reality and hence they are good for policy making, but at the same time he says that this is bad for democracy, and he praises Wilson for that. Wilson should be praised for understanding this dilemma and straightforwardly confronting it. Whether he was ambivalent about it is the criticism of the critics, क्योंकि critics को criticize करना होता है, इसके लिए वो criticize करते हैं. But Wilson put forward this dilemma. He understood the whole situation in detail. That is what Wilson should be praised for. उसने पॉजिटिव भी पुट फॉरवर्ड किया है, नेगेटिव भी पुट फॉरवर्ड किया है. The next we will learn about is Peter Self's analysis of dichotomy. Peter Self's analysis of dichotomy is administration is means and politics is ends. Administration is career and politics is vocation. It will always remain difficult to put questions of policy and questions of detail into insulated compartments. This is what Peter Self says, that questions of policy and questions of detail, policy और administration, politics और administration को आप separate नहीं कर सकते. Politics is ends, administration is means to achieve that end. Politics is vocation and administration is career. So this is how they are intricately connected. He gives us a political administrative arc. As you can see, he gives us a political administrative arc. He says that they cannot be separate, politics and administration cannot be separate, but they are the two ends of the same arc. As you can see here, they are the two ends of the same arc. Okay, so what he says is that political will flows up one side of the arc to its apex. Okay, यहाँ से political will शुरू होती है और यहाँ पे वो administrative will के साथ आके मिल जाती है, and that is how this flow of power works. And this flow of power is not always one directional. Administrative policies can also come towards political arc. So this is not always one directional. This is what Peter Self says. So coming forward are Nicholas Henry's paradigms. What I'll do is I'll end this lecture here, and Nicholas Henry's paradigms I'll deal in the next video. And thank you for watching till here. I hope you have enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you do not want to miss on the next video, and like and comment on the video whatever changes you want me to make on my teaching style. So I'll inculcate them, and whatever new modules you want me to pick up. One thing I can make sure of is whatever I'll cover will be very exhaustive and will be in very detail, so you will not have to worry about it. As we have seen today, we learned about Golembiewski, we learned about evolution of public administration, we learned about Woodrow Wilson in detail, and in next lecture we'll learn about Nicholas Henry's paradigms. We'll continue it from there on. Thank you for watching. Peace out.